Happy Halloween, boils and ghouls, and welcome to episode 7 of the Innsmouth Gold videocast, a Frankenstein special. Now, I'm of an age where I grew up with Universal Monster bubblegum cards, the Munsters, the Hammer films, so for me, Frankenstein, Dracula and the Wolfman are still the classic monsters. Frankenstein, of course, was the creation of Mary Shelley, published anonymously at first in London in 1818. After that fateful weekend with Shelley, Byron and Polidori each vying to write the best horror story they could. It's a question of discussion in some ways as to whether Frankenstein is actually a horror story or, as some have called it, the first science fiction novel, because unlike all the other monsters or creatures, Frankenstein's creation is born of science. It isn't a supernatural creature. There's no supernatural process involved in the story. So for that reason, as well as of course the iconic Boris Karloff makeup and classic look, I've always found Frankenstein's story very interesting. There's been a huge amount of film adaptations and variations over the years, and I don't think it's a stretch even to say that the latest Blade Runner film in its own way is a version of the Frankenstein story. If you'd like to find out more about Mary Shelley, the guys at HB Podcraft did a great, I think it was 5 or 6 part series on Frankenstein, where they covered the whole novel in depth, talked about a lot of the themes and covered Mary Shelley's own personal history. It's a really good series of podcasts, and of course we'll put the link up in the notes below. So let's look at the trio of Frankenstein offerings we've got for you today. We're going to start with 2 TV shows. Neither of them is particularly new, but you have to understand that here in Innsmouth it takes a while for new TV shows and films to get through to us. Most of the time we're watching reruns of Creature in the Black Lagoon and I Love Dagon. So let's begin with the Frankenstein Chronicles. So this is a British TV drama, first aired in 2015. It's set in London in 1827, about 10 years after the publication of Frankenstein the novel. The main character is Inspector John Marlott, played by Sean Bean, who's a river police officer, and he finds a corpse washed up on the bank of the Thames that on closer inspection it looks to be made up of the body parts from several children. He is tasked by his boss, Sir Robert Peel, who was then the Home Secretary and of course the founder of the modern police force, to determine the identity of whoever was responsible for this abomination. So from this beginning we're plunged into a kind of classic Gothic world of London fog, body snatchers, bizarre medical experiments, political intrigue, child prostitution and murder. It's got the lot. One of the central themes of the series are the medical ethics involved in the new science that was developing, and of course the religious implications as well, tied in with a lot of political intrigue. So we've mentioned Mary Shelley already. She comes into the proceedings as the drama unfolds. We also get to see William Blake, played very nicely by Stephen Burkoff. And there's also an appearance from a character called Boz, a young journalist, who is actually the young Charles Dickens, so that was a very nice touch as well. So the main character, Marlott, the police officer, is played by Sean Bean, of course always puts in a solid performance. Marlott is an ex-soldier, a veteran of Waterloo, and Sean Bean was the associate producer on this series, so we also get some nice little in-jokes referring back to his earlier role of Sharp. Marlott was in the 95th Rifles, the same unit as Sharp. We see him having the green jacket, packing away his green jacket at one point, which of course was the colours of Sharp's regiment. And at one point he heard humming the tune Over the Hills and Far Away, which was the theme tune to Sharp. So that's a nice little touch there, I thought. Now Marlott is something of a tortured soul. He is racked by guilt, having caused the death of his wife and young child through the syphilis that he suffers from. This illness is active within him, and the syphilis and the treatment he's taken for it also bring on very vivid nightmares and hallucinations, which form part of the drama as well, and are woven in very nicely. Speaking of that, this is a very grim depiction of London at the time. and I think people forget or don't appreciate just how tough life was back then for, well, not even the ordinary person, even the richer people suffered in many ways, but for the average or poor person, it could be a hellish existence. So this is not a chocolate box vision of rosy-cheeked urchins in the East End of London. This shows people they're hungry, they're diseased, they're desperate, and it is very graphic in that sense, which I think is a good thing. While it's based around the Frankenstein legend, if you want to call it that, it is an original story. I'm not going to give too much away about the plot, save that it develops along very interesting lines. I thought it started to drag a little bit in the middle, but then the last couple of episodes really ratchet the tension up, and the ending was very good, I thought. There's we have a kind of saying in my house: if Sean Bean is in something, how long is it before he dies? Because he always seems to die in most of the films he's in. Does he die in this? Well, you'll have to watch and find out. So this was a 6-part series, as we said, in 2015. Shooting did begin on a second series in March this year, and I believe I'm right in saying that that second series is due for release very soon. It may even be out later this week, I think. So if you like the Penny Dreadfuls, or Ripper Street, gothic dramas, the Frankenstein legend, then I would highly recommend this. Certainly if you haven't seen it, catch up on the first series and then watch out for that second series beginning soon. Now for our second TV Frankenstein, we go from the sublime to the ridiculous with Mary Shelley's Frankenhole. This is a stop-motion animated TV series. It was created by Dino Stamatopoulos. It was shown on Adult Swim and ran for 2 seasons, so there's only 20 episodes. So the main premise of the series is that Dr. Frankenstein has mastered immortality and has also created a number of wormholes, or Frankenholes, which lead from his Eastern European village, which is teeming with various monsters, to all parts of space and time. What then happens is various historical figures and celebrities travel through the Frankenhole to avail themselves of the Doctor's dubious services. We have a regular group of characters, which is Dr. Victor Frankenstein himself, his wife Elizabeth, and Polidori. They're all immortal. We also have Count Dracula present, who's kind of Victor's rival and is conducting an affair with Elizabeth and constantly trying to turn her into a vampire. There's the Frankenstein creature, who has incredibly low self-esteem, and of course it wouldn't be complete without the hunchback Igor, the assistant, who's got a very weird high-pitched childish voice and just simply says, "You got it." That's pretty much all the dialogue poor old Igor gets. Alongside that we have all the classic monsters: the Mummy, Vampire Hunters, the Wolfman, Dr. Jekyll, Death shows up. There's a great vampire trio, one of whom is a kind of Nosferatu figure who speaks by holding up the silent movie cards. That's a really nice touch as well. Godzilla puts in an appearance. So if you grew up on, like I did, the Universal Monsters, the Hammer Horror, all those things, they're all in here at some point or another. People like Lovecraft gets name checked, Poe is in there, everything is mixed in. So in the first season you kind of get a different historical figure or celebrity turn up at the castle every week. Season 2 was more about exploring the Frankenhole universe and explaining how things got to this stage, why Michael Jackson's son owns the local tavern, for example, and why Gandhi is a vampire. So that will give you some idea of the humour. Perhaps it's very dark, it's very satirical, it's very twisted. It's certainly not PC, and it's certainly not for the easily offended. I think the creator himself said he wanted to have a show that had all those horror tropes in as well, mixed in with this dark satire, so it works beautifully on that level. The theme tune's also great as well, by a guy called Peter Blood, who I'd not heard of before, so I'm going to be checking out more of his work as well. If you like twisted humour, if you like dark satire, if you're a fan of classic monsters, then this really is worth taking a look at. I'm not sure where it's available at the moment. You may be able to get it on DVD through Amazon and all the other usual or unusual sites, and it could well be streaming on Netflix or one of those services. I'm sure if you have a search around in the right places, you'll be able to find it. So before we continue, I just want to mention our Innsmouth Gold Halloween offer this year. For just £1 you can get a PDF download of our Lovecraftian novella, The Dunwich Nightmare. That's set in modern day Dunwich out on the east coast, and describes how a police officer is drawn into an investigation of savage murders that link into a strange secret government facility nearby. We're also throwing in some music tracks, including some tracks from our Innsmouth Gold albums Ritual and Dream and Illustrations of Madness. So we'll put the link up below and in the show notes. Pop over to the site. For just £1 you get a nice little audio and visual package there. So we mentioned a trio of Frankensteins. Our third offering is musical. My band The Phobias are putting out our first album in November, and as a Halloween treat we thought we'd release this track and make a video for it. It's called Lady Frankenstein and we're going to play it just now. I hope you enjoy it. Please remember, if you like the video cast, to share, to subscribe, keep in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter and all the usual routes. Until next time, happy hauntings!